This is Abhisheksengupta and welcome back. We are here with another episode of Knowledge Talks. Now, in this episode, we have with us someone special, Uhriel Bedoya. He is based out in Miami, Florida, in United States. He is well known for being an operational expert, strategist, and business developer. He is the director of payment operations at Clio. He keeps on writing on various subjects. He went through Wharton School and Lauder Institute, University of Pennsylvania. As Uriel is here with us, we have selected a wonderful topic, crisis and resilient company values. So this is going to be interesting, so stay with us till the end. First and foremost, Uriel, welcome to our show and thank you for taking out time and being a part.
Thanks so much, Abhishek. Great to be here.
Same here, Uriel. Uriel, I'm going straight to the topic. My point number one is why resilient company values matter. Now, we have been hearing about this resilient and all these things, especially such kind of terms were very common after COVID, because, COVID, lot of, layoffs has happened, lot of companies closed out. So the value or importance of resilience has come up exactly from this crisis period. Now, over here, I would like you to, explain us the role of company values, which can act as a guiding North Star during uncertainty. And if you could also highlight the examples from recent crises, which has led to tech layoffs, financial disruptions, etc., to illustrate how the values impact decision making and morale. Over to you.
No, thank you. So I will start with the definition because I know that the word resilience has been used and perhaps even overused. The pandemic didn't help us in that regard because that was the one key word that everybody used during the pandemic. But there's a reason behind it. The meaning, the etymology of the word is to bounce back, to be able to deal with adversity and come back from it. If you look at that definition by itself and add the term of values, we connect with other human beings on all sorts of spaces. We connect with them on things that we like. We connect with them on politics in some cases. We connect with them over meals. We connect with them over travel. We connect with human beings on all sorts of different levels. But we also connect with them at a very basic level. The ones that we have the most affinity for and with are those who have some shared values. And the values, let me be clear there, it has nothing to do with religion. A lot of people think that when you say values, you're talking about religion. No, we're talking about human values, having respect for certain things, certain norms, certain standards. And let's just even go to our personal lives. We establish relationships with other human beings, partnerships on a personal level. What holds those together is a shared set of values. Primarily, there will always be disagreements, there will always be something to work through, but when you have that common shared set of values that's anchoring the onset and the foundation of that relationship, that's how you pull through. We have relationships with other human beings, but we also have relationships with companies. What happens there is companies in some way have to have a shared set of core values with us as individuals for that relationship to work.
Oriel, I must say you have wonderfully explained three very important points which you have just mentioned. Is that first, resilience is synonymous to bouncing back. It's not getting back. It could be bouncing back in any. It could be in form of relations, it could be in form of business, it could be in form of travel, it could be anything. The core value over here is definitely the bouncing back. So that's what is resilience, and it is a very important value in business, or it could be any part of the life, any aspect of life, because we always say whether it is business or whether it is life, it's not a straight road. It's more like a roller coaster. It goes up, it comes down, goes up, comes down. It's something like peaks and valleys, as mentioned by Spencer Johnson in his book. So peaks and valleys is something which entrusts or endorses this value of resilience or bouncing back. Second is definitely you have mentioned is the value. Value is it's not exactly the religious value or something like that what you have mentioned, but it's more of a human values like respecting and all those. Now this third point is that it also gets into anchoring the foundation. Now, foundations are very important. Many a times when we grow, when in our day-to-day life, we miss the foundations. But these values are something which anchors us to the foundation. I have even seen in life also, because in business is one aspect, moreover the holistic picture is definitely life. Many a times in our day-to-day hustle or day-to-day grinding, I must say, we miss our values, we lose our foundation. And most of the time, I have personally seen that people start suffering because of that. We miss our basics, we miss our foundations. So overall, I think this is a very holistic picture which you have given, some very good explanation. Now, this is taking us to testing integrity, actions versus words. Now, this is a actions and words many a times go far apart, because let it be in business or let it be in the in life, whatever we say it, and many times we say so many things, but when it comes to taking actions, we miss somewhere. So if you can let us explore how the crisis reveal whether the companies or businesses truly live their stated value. That's point number one. And if you could use some scenario like layoff or funding challenges to show the importance of aligning actions with value, even under pressure or even under in a bad situation, crisis situation. Over to you.
I have two examples that come to mind on those. I will start with one. I firmly believe that we have to, in a way, protect the not so innocent in this conversation. So I will avoid mentioning specific companies, but people can extrapolate based on some of the data points. But there was one company that in its set of values had the fact that we're a family. That's very noble. It sounds very good that you're treating each other like a family. However, this particular company, fast forward a few years, it had to do layoffs. And there's one key concept. Some people may argue against this one, but you don't fire your family members. I don't think you can fire them, even if you wanted to do that. That right there put that value right in conflict. Because here is something that we stated that we are, yet we're doing something, we're taking an action that doesn't quite align with that value of being a family. That is a good opportunity to, decisions being what they are, sometimes it is in the best interest of the company to do that, to do layoffs for survival. I'm not a huge fan of that, obviously, but because it affects more than just the company, it affects individuals and their families and their loved ones in ways that we cannot really measure. But when those values get tested and they fail, like they did in this particular situation, the recommendation there is take a look at the value again and revisit it and change it and tweak it to be something that's more realistic. Our relationships with companies are asymmetric in the sense that there is work that gets done and there's compensation that comes from that side. And so the whole concept of being a family sounds good on paper, but in practice very difficult. And it's in those moments when those get tested and they get broken, when you have an opportunity to kind of take a step back and reassess exactly what your values should be and communicate that openly to your company, saying, hey, we made a error in judgment here in terms of this being a core value. It doesn't stand the test of conflict and pressure, and we needed to reassess it. And here's the end result. Come back with something to the table that really adjusts that particular set of values. The other example that comes to mind, and this one is another one that is just, I've advised a lot of companies over the course of various years, and this particular company that I was advising, they had a value that was very much attached to Nelson Mandela's core belief that, based on a phrase that he said, that basically said, I never lose, I either win or I learn. It's one of those very notorious, famous Nelson Mandela quotes, and he's one of those folks that I think there's a lot to be learned from his entire lived life. And so with that in mind, this particular company had one of its values anchored into that same belief. Yet when a big error took place, it became really a situation where people were pointing fingers at each other, and there were some people who exited the organization as a result of that finger pointing and assigning blame or responsibility for something having gone wrong. And so in that specific example, you have clearly a situation where company stated its values, but didn't even try to uphold them on the other side. Didn't even try. The two examples may seem similar, but they're not. The first one is, it's clearly we're not this, and we need to make an adjustment. The second one is a choice. The second one is, we've stated this is what we want to do, yet we've made a choice to do this other thing that just goes in conflict to what our stated goal was. The lesson there really is, do you mean your value? Do you really believe it? Because that's the other thing. You get a bunch of people into a room to craft these values, and everybody comes up with great ideas. They are only sound bites unless people at their core believe it. And it's only sound bites if you don't take the steps to have a deep conversation of what would happen to that value under stress. And that's a conversation that seldom organizations and leadership have about what they're putting out there as their core values. It's an important conversation to have, because you do want to make sure that whenever there is a crisis, that you've already done the job of assessing how your values stand to those crises and been able to define that, not only for your own core leadership, but for everybody in the company. Here are our values, and here's why we believe this is what's going to take us from here to the next stage, regardless of what happens.
Wow, that's very good explanation. I have taken down a couple of points, and some of them are really eye-openers for me also. First, and see what are your values. That is important. Most of the people I have seen, they copy paste some fancy stuff and everything, but every organization's value is different based on the work they do, based on the clients they handle, and based on the situation under which that operates. So first come first, you have to set what exactly is your value, what exactly are your values rather. And point number two over here is that to communicate those in many ways. It's not just word, or not just making the team repeat exactly you're there, but with your every action, with your every step you take, it has to be communicated like that. If your company is more customer centric, your actions should speak. If it's more of a human resources or employee centric, your actions should speak. So that's what you communicate. It's not just by pasting a placard on the wall, or probably on the board or something like that. You have to communicate those to the external stakeholders as well as to the internal stakeholder through right actions. Wonderful quote you have mentioned: I never lose, either I win or I learn. So I think this is something, this is a quote. I must say, these are the golden words, I must say. So even the losing is not a losing as long as you keep on learning from the lose. That's how, because no one can make you lose unless and until you decide to lose. So that's something. Last 2 points. Do you really mean your values? That's what I said. You can set your values, you can paste it on the wall, but again the question comes, do you really mean that? It has to come out of your action. It's not just a printout, it's not just a board hanging on your office wall, something. Do you really mean your values? And last point, conversing your values under stress. When you come under stress, how you are going to set your values, follow your values, communicate those. So that is very important. I must say, this conversation I have hardly seen the companies doing. I have personally, probably once or twice, probably in the rare cases I have seen, but most of the time these are the difficult conversations, and people or the companies do avoid that. So I can take a name of Indian business group you must be knowing, that is Tata Group. Tata is one of the biggest Indian conglomerate, and it has got a global business arms as well. And recently, Mr. Ratan Tata, Sir Ratan Tata, the chairman emirate, has passed away. So that was a very sad occasion for the entire Tata family, for all of us rather, because we used to say that Ratan Tata was one person with zero haters. Even their competitors used to love him like this. So it's all because of the values they communicated when they have their tough times. When many of the Tata companies faced a lot of tough time, lot of difficult situations. But under all situations, they have put their values in to the highest order, I must say. I have hardly seen, or hardly heard that they are laying off a lot of people. It's not. They only take the people who they require, that they fill up the positions like that, they plan their manpower like that. And layoff is a very rare situation unless someone does anything mischievous or something like that. So Tata Group is in India is one of the example who walks their talk. So anyway, so some of the very good examples which you have given, and it was a wonderful discussion. Now, this is taking us to the next point, engaging employees in value creation. Now, emphasizing inclusivity in crafting or revisiting values by involving employees across all level is very essential. Many a times, most of the high-end decisions or the value creative decisions are taken by board of directors or CXO level. So many a times such kind of decisions fail. I must say more than 50% of such kind of decision fails, or employees are bound to do that because order came from very high level, something like that. Now, how important is this engaging employees in value creation? That's point number one. And could you also share practical strategies for collecting input from diverse team member in this? Over to you.
First, I'm going to mention Tata. And I'm glad you mentioned that as an example, because I think it's not just an Indian example, it's a global example. If you've been following the company and its leadership, then you do understand that. So I'm grateful you brought that up, which brings in a very important aspect of values, and that is its leader in a way personified the values, which is at the core a manifestation of values, a manifestation of identity for the company. In a way, this is who we are, the collective we in this endeavor as a company. Our values manifest who we are. Now, translating into the question, bringing others along for the ride and crafting those values. If you want values that really are a reflection of the collective we and the identity of a company, then it is important and imperative that it's not just a small group of people, senior leaders sitting in a room crafting the values, but rather you bring in along for the ride people who are in more entry-level roles and middle management and all parts of the organization. Why? Because if we are creating that ethos, that North Star of the collective we, you need to include the we in that by having people who represent different stakeholder groups. And what I mean by diversity, it's another term that's been pretty much used and overused in so many different spaces. One of those things that seldom gets talked about is that cognitive diversity, that difference in thinking that adds value into not only the company, but also its core values. And being able to bring people who, based on their life experience, but also their professional experience, what they're doing currently, into how we create these values is important. So how you do that is you start by engaging everybody. You can do that by a questionnaire, a survey that you send to all of your employees and see exactly of a list of proposed general values, which you can do that with your senior executives and kind of set a set of values that you think are the right ones for the company, and you send them out just to get people's opinions. Have them have a say. I'm not going to say that necessarily you're going to pick those, but at least people would have expressed their thoughts as to which ones represent them. Having that picture is important because a clear picture of what your folks are thinking will also reflect on you whether or not the values that you're picking are really resonating with the people working for your company. That is the first point. And with that, you can then start creating subgroups and socializing. So focus groups to socialize a reduced number of values to see exactly how those resonate with people, asking for their feedback. By the time you get to unveiling those company values, you're going to have buy-in from pretty much everybody. Why? Because you engage them to be a part of the process. What happens often is when you do not engage others in your crafting of your values, they don't feel as connected because they did not participate in the process. The more you bring people along, the better off you're going to be in this particular case.
I must say that's a great explanation. I think that's how it's not that rocket science how you involve your team in value creation. I think it's a very well and very in a most the most effective way you have discussed. I have taken down some of the point. First and foremost, values manifest who we are. Now, this is a very powerful statement that you have made because who we are, it probably I can be the managing director of any company because that's just a designation. But who am I? Depends on the values I create.
Yes, exactly. And so if we don't, and we probably could benefit as individuals also taking a minute or two to sit down and think through that. How many of us have actually sat down and thought, what are my core values? What do I really at the core, who am I? And write it down. The question I'm sure we've all posed ourselves before, but taking the time and being intentional with sitting down to write that down and then take it one step further, start looking. Everybody, there's a saying that goes that we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. If you've done the work correctly and you've taken the time to write down what your core values are, in some way, shape, or form, when you start reading through them, you realize that those people who are the closest to you also reflect the same values.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Setting value, writing that is one of the very powerful techniques. Many a times it is said that even if you're planning something, you must write it down. You cannot do any mental planning like this because most of the mental plannings are never executed. So that's why average of 5 is a very powerful, mechanism, I must say. Definitely it is said that anyone is the average of 5 people that person mixes or socializes with, and that's what. And this shared value, with one group or with the values which we are having, definitely same value will get manifested in those 5 people. That's absolute reality. Now, second point which I have taken is that this gives a clear pic what our folks are thinking. Definitely, I might be thinking good, I might be, but it's important what my team is thinking, what even the ground level staff is thinking. That's really makes a difference because all big companies or whatever, one of the reason for their success is that their ethos, their values, their whatever is their mission vision flows down deep inside their hierarchy. It's not that the CXO level or their boardroom is aware of what exactly, but even the person who is working at the ground level, they are aware of this. And it is always said that you have to train, being if you are in army, you have to train your infantries because it's infantries who fight the war. It's not the generals are just the strategy maker. So whatever your strategy, whatever your value, it has to get down into the hierarchy, and it has to be get into the blood of even the ground level person and who are the base of the pyramid. Now, next come how to do that. You have mentioned that's again very simple. You divide it into groups, subgroups, and even the focus group. Focus group here, I must say, is very important. Why I say it's very important, a certain group of people specializes in the certain job. So, in case I am strategizing anything on that job, so probably the person who is focusing on that job is really is the important character over there. So focus group is a very important. I have worked in many focus group, and focus group is a very powerful way of doing this. So some of the very good points which we got from you. Now this is taking us to the next point. Now, role of leadership in living the values. Now we have even seen that founders or the senior leader set the tone by embodying values daily. Now, this is a powerful technique again, but at the same time, it is important that how it gets communicated to the base of the pyramid. That's important, but leadership really matters. Now, could you help us understand with some example or case studies or stories where the leadership either upheld or failed upholding the values during tough situations or during crisis situation? Over to you.
I've seen examples of both situations where leadership has upheld its values and where but they don't. One clear example that comes to mind is COVID. And there are some companies that they really firmly believe their values to the point that when they had to make tough decisions, when they stated the reasons behind those tough decisions, which we all saw it happening across the world, companies shutting down operations or downsizing or bringing people down, bringing people off the payroll, not bringing them down, but rather kind of taking them off payroll. You could see in the statements that companies were releasing whether or not they were leaning into their values, because they would state as much, basically, based on our value of this, of our value of being one team. We've had to make a hard decision. Senior leadership is taking a cut in their pay. So they're basically not just talking about the sacrifices that were needed to be made in terms of cutting employees. They were starting to talk about some of the sacrifices needed to make at a very senior level, which was financial, which some people may say you can't compare somebody losing their job to somebody taking a pay cut. But if we want to really look at the detail, if you're looking at certain key level roles, you cannot let those people go home, because those are existential to the business continuing. Other people may suffer from a layoff, but somebody being willing to take a pay cut and making that public as a result of helping the company survive, that tells you that their values, that they're leaning into them really heavily, and that they're really making decisions that they really had to think through and hard, and that those values were at the table when those decisions were being made. Are we living by this that we stated was the way that we want to do things? And then there are others that really, like I mentioned earlier, I've advised and seen quite a lot of circumstances in my career. There was one situation. This is the situation I've seen in more than one organization, where they tout their value of inclusion and equity, diversity, and all these different things, which is also had a big emphasis in the last few years. And you then see the outcome of some of these hard decisions that they needed to make as a result of the pandemic, and rounds of funding that were not available anymore because of dried out equity markets or dried out VC markets. And you could see the net result. It was mostly underrepresented groups that were adversely impacted by those decisions. And so on one side, you have organizations making a statement of being committed to that equity inclusion, and on the other side, the outcome of their decisions and mostly adversely affecting those specific groups. And so there's a huge disconnect there, which brings to the tables like the value was not really upheld. It didn't stand the test of time. As a matter of fact, I find that if we wanted to lean into that specific value, the companies that are doing the most of the better work around that are the ones that are the least advertising that they're doing it, that the least putting it out there. They're the ones that are doing the best job.
Wow, that's great. Two important points which I got. First one is leading the decision. So whatever the decision a senior management is taking, or probably the CEO of the company is taking, he should first lead that decision. It could be, let him get the first hit. That is one aspect of it. But even if when it's not a crisis situation, instead of working as a boss, he is leading the team to achieve something. So I think that is one part of it, how we can select or how we can we can analyze that situation. Second is that statement and outcomes, when disparity between statement and outcome is wide, or I must say when the difference, whatever they state and whatever they do, there is a wide difference between that. Obviously that's one of the clear-cut sign how the values are not in place, or probably they are not upholding the value which they preach actually. But when the statement and outcome are similar, may not be same but similar, with almost no difference, we can always say the values are definitely upheld. I think these are two very simple ways of understanding this, so it's very well described from you by your end. Now this is taking us to the next point: building a culture playbook. Now, this is probably your patent concept, I must say, the culture playbook, which I actually got it from your article only. Now, the concept of culture playbook is interesting. So if you could introduce us to this concept, that's number one. Now, as a part of business continuity plan, how important is this to uphold the company values? That's point number one. That's point number two. And could you please also suggest the protocols for navigating challenges like layoffs or industry shifts while staying true to the value using this culture playbook? Over to you.
So yes, the culture playbook. I'm glad to hear that you haven't heard it anywhere else, because that was something that I in my head was ruminating about, because regardless of the company, every company has playbooks for all sorts of scenarios. You have a sales playbook, customer acquisition playbook, you have a contingency plan in case something goes wrong. You have all of these different things in place in most companies. Either they're in place or they're on their way to putting them in place. But culture didn't have one. I've never seen one happen. I've seen guidance around values. I've seen guidance on certain mandatory trainings to avoid certain situations, and I've seen great videos about that. But I've never seen anything where a company can take its values and really have them be living, breathing things, not just something on a piece of paper. So that's the concept. The concept is, how do we take these values and bring them to life, make them be a living, breathing thing in our everyday business lives? That's the concept of the playbook. Something that's going to help us to make sure that we're bringing those values to everything that we do, and that deliberately is mentioned in meetings. So for me, a playbook has two parts. One is, how do we incorporate those values and our culture on a day-to-day basis? How do you mention the values in daily meetings, regardless of who the meetings are with or where certain values are being exhibited? There's some leaders that I've experienced, particularly recently, who are phenomenal at that they will be in a meeting with somebody and point out to somebody and say, that's a great example of this particular value. That's bringing the value to life. So recognizing your colleagues live in the moment in front of others as embodiments of those values, it's a way to bring those values to life. It would guide leaders, particularly those managing people and teams, to be able to point out examples so people can see. People like recognition. People enjoy being pointed out for accomplishments and things that they've done well. And as culture carriers, that's another term that we've used quite a bit. Who are the culture carriers of an organization? And there's some people who really embody all the values, which is fantastic, but there are others who gravitate towards one or the other. Everybody is going to be playing a role at the end of the day in bringing those values to life. So that's one tactic that a playbook would bring, not only guidance to leaders, but also guidance to employees as well. What are the things that you can be doing to bring those values to life in your daily interactions? This is why a playbook is important, because a lot of times a company tells you what the values are, but they don't tell you behaviors and things that you can be doing to bring them to your daily life. So that's part one. Part two of the playbook, it's a little trickier, but something that we would need to do as well, which is stress testing those values. What are the various things that we would need to do? You mentioned layoffs earlier, like probably one of the least favorite topics to talk about, but it's also a reality for many people who unfortunately have been affected by them. How, if in eventuality you have to make those kind of tough decisions, or there is a natural disaster or something happens, what are the key things that you should be doing as a leader to embody the values and make sure that those values are present when you make these tough decisions? That has to be an intentional exercise. And by putting it on paper, the values and how they would be brought to life under duress and under different difficult situations, people don't just need concepts, they need guidance on how to get it done. It's not just the what, it's also the how. And so the playbook would bring all of those scenarios together, both the very positive ones that we're excited about and the not so happy ones, and provide a roadmap, if you will, for leaders and employees on how to navigate those circumstances, leaning into those values specifically.
Wow, that's a very interesting concept. I have written so many points while you were speaking. First and foremost, you said you have rightly said that we do have a SOP or standard operating procedure for sales, for marketing, for operations, for human resources, probably so many things. But how about culture? We don't have any SOP. We don't have any culture playbook in place. So that's something which is deficient. It's, in fact, I must say it is an eye opener for me also. Even in my organization, in my company, I don't have any cultural playbook. I do have how to handle clients, how to respond to a client query, everything we are having, how we can write uniformly write an email, so and so and so. But this cultural playbook is something really missing. That's point number one. And you have wonderfully mentioned how a cultural playbook should look like. It should have two parts. Number one is definitely to incorporate values. So, whatever the values, you write it down, you incorporate them in that playbook. Now, this acts as a guidance to the employees, to the colleagues, to everyone. And one quick thing, or one quick tip which you have given, you can always recognize your colleagues that yes, this is the value which we are looking for, or probably this is the value which we are having. It's a right representation of our value. So this gives a lot of encouragement. Pat on the back in the front of everyone has got a lot of impact. Second is that stress testing the values. I think this is the real, this is a very important part, how we can stress test those values. We can say, okay, we do have values, but when it actually comes to show the values during the stressful time, is something which we all need to practice. We always say that forces or military, they keep on practicing war games so that they can fight the real war. So in order to be ready for the tough time or the stressful time, we must keep rehearsing those. So stress testing the value is a very important concept. I must say this is one of the must to in all the organization and all the companies, all the businesses. Like, now key things that is that it must mention the key things which a leader should do during stressful time. Now, this will also act as a stress manual, during a contingency time or during a stressful time. Leaders should be doing point number one, point number two, point number three, point number four, like that. So that's there. And last point which you have mentioned, the colleagues do not need concept. Of course, they do need concept, but much more than that, they need guidance. That's what is important. Guidance more than concepts. So that's something very easy way of I must say that's a wonderful way of explanation. Now this is taking us to the next point: measuring and evolving values over time. Now, if you can help us to understand how to evaluate the effectiveness of company values through employee feedback, engagement metrics, and crisis response or retrospectives, you may say. Now this can also help to explore how to adopt these values as the company grows or when external conditions change. Over to you.
That is most definitely one of the most important components of all this, because when you think about it, the only way that values can really stand the test of time is if they're put to the test. Sometimes they get put to the test and they stand, which is great, because that means that you came up with a good value. It's been tested, it's going to be there. Nothing is perfect in life. Sometimes you have to make adjustments. I mentioned the example earlier of a company that referred to his employees as part of his culture and his values as a family. And then in the face of layoffs, they had to make the hard decision of pivoting away from that family concept, because you don't fire family members. It's just very simple. Some may argue and disagree on that one, because some people may be thinking that they can fire the family members. But if your values do not hold in a crisis, that's a good opportunity to take a step back and do it publicly. Take a step back, acknowledge that this was not well crafted, and you may have the best of intentions, but if it doesn't stand, you need to be humble about it and reassess and reassign something that really does match with your intention. Because that's the thing about values too. It's important to have a really clear, direct line between your intentions and your outcomes. If your intentions are here, but your outcomes are so disparate from what you've intended, there's a miss there. And so we don't see it as a loss, back to Nelson Mandela, but as an opportunity to learn something and tweak those values to be something that matches along the lines of that intention, and do it in a way that's very transparent. One thing that I didn't mention earlier, which I think is also important, is about the playbook. A playbook also makes you accountable, because a playbook is public. You're putting out there not only what your values are, you're putting out there how to embody them, both in good times and not so good times. So people, through employee engagement surveys, that's one very solid way that companies can really gauge where employees are around the culture and where they are around certain key happenings within the company and whether they're abiding by the culture. That's one way to really poll your audience, poll your target, and get their opinion as to whether or not you really are living by the values that you stated. Accountability is important. So it's done two ways: by publishing your intention and your desired outcomes in the form of a playbook, and also through surveys where people get to have their voices heard. That right there is also key. Is if you're not polling and getting a sense, a pulse, and from your constituents as to whether or not you're really doing things the right way and doing the right things, then you're missing a great opportunity to get the feedback that you need to see if things are really working. At the end of the day, if your culture is not really working, people will go out and manifest that. We've all heard of Glassdoor reviews. People are not shy to go on there and post happenings that are both good and not so good about companies. And at the end, most of those reviews, if you read through Glassdoor reviews of companies that are really well rated and companies that are not so really well rated, the common denominator that you'll see is that most of those reviews are based on culture metrics. It's based on culture metrics, nothing else. We can read about financial results in all sorts of different avenues. You can read articles, you can read them. If your company's gone public, you can read them there. But reviews are typically more about how people feel and how they've been made to feel. And that right there is at the core and the heart of your values.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. That's really interesting how this happens. First and foremost, when there are certain things which might not work. There are certain values which may not stand the test of the time. So it is also is good to be humble with this and reassess that. That's a normal thing. Many a times we have seen, they keep on changing. Companies, keep on reassessing that and coming up with newer value figures and all those things. That's pretty normal. We should not be sticking with that. We should be dynamic. That's point number one. Surveys are the great thing. That's point number two, which can really help a senior management to understand whether the companies are in the same page as the company values or not. So results may be yes, result may be no. If it is no, again we need to reassess and we have to get back to our basics. We have to find out the reason, whether there is an issue with the values. If yes, again reassess. In case there is an issue with the employees, let's sort that out. What is there? So this gives a lot of action. The data never lies, it says that. So these surveys are the great tools. So if you have the data, if you have numbers, that is something which never lies. The narrations can lie and everything, but data is something which is a gold standard. Next is intentions and outcomes. So intentions and outcome, this assessment has to go on. Now many a times we have seen that during the stressful time, there is always, what are the intentions, outcomes, these do not parry with each other. They do not match with each other. So again, maybe it's situational thing. We can reassess, we can review on this, we can go on. Now if the culture is not great, people go out. Yes, that's right. Many a times it is seen, Glassdoor reviews are some of the real eye opener. Many a times I keep on reading those, and I must say those are the gold mines. I keep on, many of the reviews and many of the case studies are based on that. So now the reviews are there. If you are going to a hotel, you can give reviews on Google. If you are going to a company, you can give, even the tourist attractions, you can give a review. So reviews are everything. So review based system is something which is going on. So employers also get reviews in form of Glassdoor, and there are a couple of more platforms over there. So like that. So culture not great, employees going out, attrition rate will be high, staff retention will be low, and and once again, if these things keeps on going, numbers do not lie. There is a serious review which is required, and again, we have to get back to the basics, reassess the situation, and re-strategize. So great explanation. Now this is bringing us to the last point of this discussion: inspirational stories and lessons. I think this is going to be the most interesting part. Now, could you share us some real life examples of the company that upheld their values during crisis and reap long-term loyalty and success? Over to you.
That I find to be such a interesting question, because it really makes me reflect a lot on my career to date. And it is, I'll speak about two examples which I think really reflect of companies that really, in my view, have been a true reflection of its values. I'll start with Lime. I look at my time, which is bizarre for many people to see someone who pretty much was a banker, was in financial services and payments, and will end up in a scooter company and a scooter and e-bike company. But particularly during COVID, when hard decisions needed to be made, the company really did a great job in communicating with its employees, particularly those in leadership, communicating with us as we needed to communicate with the rest of the organization, and pretty much holding meetings to keep each other together and keep everybody kind of connected. And so that right there, I think that was a crisis that we all faced globally, and people made different choices. And the CEO at the time, Wayne Ting, he's still the CEO today, he made it a point to make sure that his people were connected and make sure that his people were being supported, particularly during the hard decisions that came. And so that right there is a very prime example of leadership and of values holding in the middle of a crisis. And so the other example is the organization that I just recently joined, Clio, and there's no crisis and not anything adverse has happened, and hopefully nothing ever will, because it's a great organization with some very smart people. That's one thing that I did see in terms of coming into the organization. You get the values from the outside, but when you're in it, you start to see them, whether or not they live by it. And I'm so excited to be at this company because you can see that we definitely are leading and living through our values, and it's really refreshing to see that, because it makes me more excited about the work that I come to do every day. It makes me more excited to have the conversation with my team about the things that we're looking to do into the future, and my leaders as well, the conversation I'm having with them about the things that we're working on, because it really resonates in the fact that we're all operating from a very well specific set of core values, and that we really believe in them. And so those are the two examples that inevitably come to my mind, one in duress, one in good times, where there are clear examples that in both situations, the leaders, specifically the most senior leaders, and it trickling down to all the other parts of the company, are really living and breathing their values. And it goes a long way to really change not only how the company grows and where it goes, but also the people you bring on board. People want to be a part of these sort of organizations. People want to join organizations where those values are lived through, and people want to join organizations that you have people touting all their virtues out into the market. And so it's a combination of things, but those are two experiences that I think that definitely were transformative and continue to be transformative for me personally today.
Wow, that's great explanation. Now, 3 points which I just got that, first, communicated, connected, and supported. I think these are the 3 pillars how you can show your leadership. Even when you are taking tough decisions, you should be communicating this. What are the problems we are facing? Why we are taking this? And in future, probably this can be reversed, or these are the ways how we are planning to go back to normal. This is point number 1. Number 2 is you have to be connected. It's not that you communicate and you snap off all your ties with your team. No, you have to be connected. You must be ready to receive a feedback. You may get a good feedback, you may get a bad feedback. That's how it is. But this being connected is very important. Third is supporting. Now, supporting, I must say, it may not be financially supporting, it could be emotionally supporting, because in COVID, probably COVID was the worst crisis our generation has seen, worldwide crisis probably. It's not only the financial, people do not only face the financial hurdles or financial stress. Emotional stress and psychological stress also popped up like anything. People gone into depressions when they were in the lockdown. They could not go out, they could not meet their friends. That's there. So support has to be, financial is one aspect of it, probably emotional support and the psychological support is very important, because it is said that even every second person is having some kind of mental health issue or other, because that's the lifestyle is like that. Probably urban people are having more rather than it's like that because of stress and strain we are taking. So like that. So communication, connection, and support. I think these three are the best pillars which you have mentioned, how your previous company has supported them. And of course, I must say that these are the great points. These are real great points. So some of the very good points which we got from you. Now, this is bringing us to the end of this talk show. It was a wonderful speaking with you, Uhriel. Any closing remarks would you like to put?
I have one thing that I'd like to add, and this is, as we wrap up, an important thing to share, and that is what has been a core value for me for many, many years. We're talking about close to 2 decades, and it goes like this. And I posted this both on my website, I posted this in my Slack as part of my profile, and it's my favorite quote, and it's a core value of mine, and it is, we're not here to see through people, we are here to see people through. We are not here to see through people, we are here to see people through. And that is very important at the core for me, because as human beings, it's very easy to forget that we're not in competition with each other all the time, that we are here to grow and learn. Each of us are on our own individual journey, both in life, personally, professionally, and we are better people, better humans, when we can contribute to somebody else by helping them and seeing them through, because they will in turn also do the same thing for us.
Wow, that's a great explanation. And I remember when I was working in hotels, because I'm from hotel background. So when I was working in hotel, it is always said that do not always get into competition. It's always good to collaborate with competitions. That's how we build a team. Many a times we have seen competition. Hotels are helping us. Okay, Abhishek, why don't you take this? Because we cannot take this. Our hotel is full. But you take this. They are take good care of our clients and everything. So client is also happy. We are happy, and we are collaborating rather than competing. So this is collaboration over competition is one aspect, and similarly it drains down to the it goes down to the team also. We should not be competing with the clients every time. Yes, healthy competition is good. That's how this helps us to grow. But at the same time, competition is also very stressful at time. Rather collaborate, see values of each other, and a right ecosystem is, or a right forum, or a right community is a very powerful, it's a very powerful tool nowadays. So that's how it is, over uh, that's how it, probably that's what is the next generation, or the in future, that's the biggest and most powerful tool we are going to see. So it was a wonderful speaking with you, Uhriel, and great points. I have probably a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of notes I have taken while I was speaking with you. Probably these are going to be in my stock for some time. I'll do a little research work on what are the topics you have said. So, moreover, your article based on which I'm recording this episode was really great. It was, many of the concepts are eye opener. Playbook is my biggest take from this talk and from your article. Probably the patent goes to you. You are having the patent of this cultural playbook concept. So, so, so this is bringing us to the end of the show. If anyone of you would like to connect with Uhriel, I will give his social media handle. You can connect with him. He writes some of the wonderful articles. You can connect with him. You can follow him over, and you can read his articles over there. So, to my podcast listeners, I request for a review. I want an honest review how my podcast is helping you and enhancing your life. I'll be back with many such episodes. Till then, stay tuned, stay connected. Have a great day. And thank you, Uhriel, once again for being a part of the show.
Thanks so much, Abhishek.